Welcome back, friendly ghosts. Today we're going to be taking a dive into a Super Nintendo fighting game called Battle Tycoon Flash Hiders SFX. I've played this game and I put it on the channel a couple of days ago, and I had fun with it when I played it, but upon going into the lab and making sure that I document a few things, I realized that this game is a lot more in depth than I originally gave it credit for. And it may just be because I'm that excited and fiending over for Street Fighter 6 that I'm just looking for anything to fill that void. That could absolutely be the case, that I'm just fiending so hard, but it is what it is. I found something that I was looking for. A game with a lot of mechanics that work and play, that allows you to play it in a variety of ways, and gauge management. It filled all the check boxes that I was looking for, and just so happens to be obscure on top of that. And so we're gonna take a look at this and go into a lab session. So let's start with the basics. So forward dashes in this game don't start up immediately. They have a startup period and they have a recovery period, unless you cancel out of the recovery period with a normal. You can't cancel out of forward dash with normals or specials or supers. Back dashes are frame 1 invulnerable. These are your dodges. That's how you get out of tight situations. The fastest normals per character is very, some are better with standing close, some are better with crouching. It just varies throughout the entire cast. Each character has a different speed and jump arc, but also a different weight to their jump. Some characters are very heavy, whereas other characters are very floaty. They hover around like a feather in the air, but they can also wall bounce and wall jump, so there's a lot of types, and it may take a couple of picks before you find something that suits you. Now, the wake up game. There is no wake up advantage in this game. When you knock somebody down, usually you get to force a mix up on their wake up. In this game, that's not the case. They are invulnerable. They have iframes on their wake up, and those iframes last until they are fully recovered. And this means both players press a button, a jab. Those jabs are going to trade every single time. Now, on the chance that the wake up E presses a button a bit late, a bit after their wake up has completed and they could press a button, the offensive player who's pressuring them does get the advantage in that scenario, because the wake up player loses their iframes in that scenario. If the moment that the person waking up presses a button, they lose their iframes and they become active. But you only become active, when you're able to trade and when you're at, is an even playing field. But if that player is late pressing that button, then they lose their iframes in that period and they take the hit instead. Many characters have startup iframes on their specials and supers. This is one scenario that allows you to pressure safely or more safely. You might want to consider throwing out a special move that has a lot of iframes on the startup, and this is generally the safest way to go about trying to apply pressure. There's plenty of options to go about doing it. Let's say that both players, the person waking up and the person trying to apply pressure, both do a wake up DP or just a special that has iframes on it. Because they both have iframes on that period, they're both going to miss each other, and so the advantage will just become based on the move that is get thrown out, you know. So it's good to explore your options, and you know, probably best to find something that crosses up and gets you out of dodge and gets you back down to the ground safely. You can go for super with iframes. You can go for you know, there's just plenty of ways that we're going to get to later on. This game gets pretty wild. This brings us to another option. Is there is a Parry Reversal in this game, and it's a universal move for each character. When you land the parry, which is forward, back, forward, punch button, you enter a parry state, a parry stance. When that stance catches a high, a mid, anything except for a low or a grab, then it catches it and it throws out an auto reversal combo, you know, a two piece. Now this isn't a guarantee. You know, that can be blocked if they bait you out with a jump in, a low jump in. They could bait you out, they could block it, they could throw out a parry themselves, you know, or they could backdash out of it. But if you throw out that parry, you get the reversal, they block it, or they dash out of it, you're going to be forced into blocking that next move. It's going to be their turn, or you're going to have to risk trading, because the reversal part of the parry is completely invincible. So you can't be hit out of that. And if they both trade reversal parries, they parry your parry, then, you know, they both collide, iframes. The one who parried first is going to be at the advantage, depending on how quickly it all transpired. But more often than not, you're just going to be at a positioning where you're going to be trade, you're just going to be, you know, reset, blah, 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 blah. So the best thing to do in this scenario, from my experience, for my one day playing the game, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to just block it or backdash out of it. And when you do this, you can get that advantage in your direction, to at least try to force them to block, or just, you know, put them in a guessing game, throw out a super move of your own, or you know, whatever, throw out something that does a high amount of guard damage. You know, there's a lot of choices and decisions to make in this game, and you know, it's really just up for interpretation of what's best for each situation. We covered the wake up part, and we covered the parries. Now this brings us to the throws. Throws are proximity based, forward plus heavy punch. Typically whenever you get into the player's shadow, their little circle shadow, that's typically the sweet spot when the throw can be active. There are no throw breaks in this game. And the biggest takeaway from all of this is that this is where the disadvantages come into play, where it's not fair. Player 1 always gets the throw priority over player 2. You know, unless the computer's involved. Player 1 always has the throw advantage if they press it on the same frame. They get 3 advantages. If both players try to throw on the exact same frame, player 1 always wins out on the throw. If player 1 presses a jab on the same frame as player 2 goes for the throw, player 1 breaks out of the throw and their jab connects before the throw. They get advantage there as well as getting away from the throw. If player 2 throws out a jab on the same frame that player 1 throws out a throw, player 1 still wins that scenario, and their throw beats out player 2's jab. Right, these are the 3 advantages of player 1 getting the throw on the exact same frame, because it has to be exactly the same frame. If it's just 1 frame sooner, then that's a different story. You know, there's tons of options to, you know, get out of it. This game has a lot of invulnerability to it. You have to backdash, you have a lot of, you know, a majority of your specials and your supers on top of that. You know, you have you know, those are your options of trying to get away from it. And as long as you are 1 frame ahead of player 1, you can avoid getting trapped in that scenario. But yeah, if you're on that exact same frame, you're at a disadvantage because you will never win that exchange. So yeah, that's pretty much the basic groundworks of this game. You know, in the various speeds and jump heights, no wake up advantage. That was always getting me. I was trying to press buttons, you know, so those are things that I know now. You know, so I started throwing out specials. Things started working more in my favor, and then sometimes that didn't work out. So I just, you know, it's just a lot of just decision makings. But there's always a tool and a solution to avoid something or to alter something. You know, and that's something that I really like about this game. You know, the more I discovered about it, the more I realized that there is so much more beneath the hood that is worth digging into. And so now that we're done covering the basics, and also we should go over the throws one more time, because throws, well, I don't think throws are going to be that big of an issue if people were to play it, try to play it competitively, or if it were to be on Fightcade or something like that. Yeah, you have to get up in their shadow for one, and it has to be on the exact same frame. If you aren't on the exact same frame that they press a button, you're not going to get the throw to even come out. Right? You're never going to get the throw to come out. So as long as that part is avoided, that throw priority is not going to happen. And you can't get throw on wake ups. You can't get that, you know, because they have iframes on wake up until they press a button or until they fully recover. And if they recover, they can recover into a backdash, and you try to go for a throw, you know, and now they're punishing your throw attempt. They're getting a full combo off of it, or they're close to a decent amount of damage off of it, you know. So there's always a solution in there, and that's something that I can appreciate. Even though I'm not a big fan, I'm not a fan at all of player 1 priority. It's just something good to know and understand as I'm going to keep playing this game. So we're moving on into the deeper understandings of the mechanics of the game. Now these are going to be the things that excite me, and they may excite you, because these are things that I felt like were the most Street Fighter 6 like in how they can alter the way you play the game. So by the life bar, there are 3 gauges. 3 gauges that you have to manage in each and every moment of the fight. And I was playing without the knowledge of what these gauges really did, and I was still having a fun time. But now that I know and how differently they affect each encounter of a fight, and seeing the unique problems and the benefits that they can give, yeah, it's really intrigued me, because I feel like it's just a little ahead of its time. So let's get into it. Aside from the best feeling of this game, which to me is just landing a hit, the hits in this game, it's not a combo game. There are combos, but it's just the satisfaction of and gratification of landing a single hit that just feels, you know, it feels meaningful. You know, it feels very momentous, and that's something that I really enjoy. And so the fact that there's more to this just helps that sensation, in my opinion. The 3 gauges that you have to manage are the attack gauge at the very top, the guard gauge in the middle, and the speed gauge at the bottom. Now, you start each round with full resources. When these gauges are full, you have the full benefits of your character, the full default benefits rather of your character stats. And as you take damage, these gauges, these resources start to deplete and you start losing these advantages. Simple enough, but it goes a little bit more than that. 2 of the gauges represent body parts taking damage to. The attack gauge is affected by upper body damage and throws. There is a universal truth regarding the 3 gauges that need to be made aware. And that's that they don't operate by percentage, 1%, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 3 different thresholds that they hit before they activate. A yellow gauge represents a debuff by about 50%. And conversely, a flashing red gauge represents a increase by 50%. The guard gauge has a 4th state, which is when it's depleted completely and enter a stun state. And also the attack and guard gauges, while they do control damage that you receive and take, they only control the damage of specials, supers, and heavies, and not throws. We'll go into these topics individually right up next. I believe it's a 50% decrease in damage when your gauge is too low. But conversely, when your health falls down below 15%, you enter a rage state. And when you enter this state, you get access to super. One of many ways you get access to super. And when you're entering this state, you get a damage increase by 50%. You get a total boost of 150% damage. The guard gauge controls guarding and defense. When your guard gauge gets too low, you're taking 50% more damage. When it's completely depleted, you enter a stun state. During this state, you're open for combos, a full combo of who the opponent's choosing. But when you enter that state, you get a guard buff, or let's say a guts-like state. Guts activates and you get a 50% increase in defense. Now the defense boost lasts for 12 seconds. So you get penalized from guarding too much, but also after you get guard crushed, you have that guard buff. You know, when you're taking that damage from that free combo, you get a guard buff, a defense buff. So I don't know, it's interesting. Now the speed gauge, this is where things get interesting, and your speed gauge gets affected by taking leg damage, and also throws affect both body and legs. The gauge changes your forward progression and also the height of your moves and movement. Similar to the other gauges, it has a overclocking mechanic to it, but this one you can control manually. This is where the crazy stuff kicks in. Now the speed overclock or overdrive or whatever the hell we're gonna call it. I'm just gonna call it overdrive because that's SF6 and shit. The speed overdrive lasts for 5 seconds. You manually trigger it and it lasts for 5 seconds. This gives you, let's say, a 2 times increase on all movement options. When the gauge is low, you have speed that is halved, so you lose those bonuses. But when you're overclocked, when you're overdrive, you come over the max limit, you get double the speed. This affects your frame data, it affects the frames of moves, not so much in the combo aspect or your combo ability. For example, it helps your ability to do these combos because it changes some of the frames and it makes it a little bit easier for you to do them. The timing becomes slightly different and allowing you to add more pressure and more mix-ups, but it also just doesn't outright give you combos that you weren't able to do before. It just makes them a bit more accessible to you, changes the timing, and allows you to apply more pressure. But in that same vein, there's definitely some unblockable saws and setups hidden in here for sure. So when you consider that, what's really the difference between just giving you combos versus just giving you threats, that can lead to unblockable setups? To get to your speed overdrive, you have to charge it with a kick taunt. You can also charge your attack with a punch taunt. Now you do these taunts by simply holding a single limbed button. And that's how you manage your gauges. And this is where the game gets a little bit deeper. While you need to do a taunt to manage your meter and to have your overclocking on your speed, you don't have to do the taunt animation. You can actually hide the taunt into your normals, into your specials, into your jumps. As long as you don't hold a direction, you get that charge. As long as you don't hold a direction, you'll start getting that charge all the same, and it'll carry over until the move finishes, as long as you hold the button down. And you can do this from normals, from grabs, specials, supers. When you get knocked down, from jumps, from parries, pretty much any scenario, as long as you don't hold a direction and you are holding down that single button, you get the charge. And this allows for some crazy stuff to happen. Because as this game is, right, you get knocked down, they try to pressure you, there's no advantage, it's an even playing field. All the while you're doing this, whether you're on the receiving end of getting hit or you're landing or dishing out the hit, you're always plotting and planning out your next move the entire time. And the speed is where the sauce is at, is definitely where the game starts to thrive, because that ×2 increase just means you're a pressure maniac. Again, the setups you can do with it, your walk speed increases, your dash speed increases, the frame data's change, your DPs get a wider range and they go up higher, they maybe get a little bit faster, and again, it doesn't change your combos, but it changes how you can get to your combos. Some characters can actually use the speed taunt, that increased speed, and dash up to you and get that throw to come out. Some characters can do that, some can't do that. But like the heavy sword wielding chick that you're going to be seeing in this video, that's something that C can do. And she already has a lot of range, but she's kind of slow. So the speed taunt is something that is very beneficial to her, and the fact that she gets that extra buff where she can just dash up to you real quick and then she can get that through, that's pretty nuts. That's pretty nuts. Also, one benefit that I didn't mention, we'll go over it right now. Anytime any one of your meters overclock, it means that you have a super available. When any gauge starts to flash or overclock, your guard gauge, when getting guard broken and recovering, it starts flashing for 12 seconds. That's your guts being activated. Your attack gauge, it activates when you at 15% life. That's your rage activating. Your speed gauge, it overclocks, it activates whenever you manually charge it past full. That's when it activates and starts flashing. That's when you get the ×2 speed. When any of these scenarios happen, you have access to super. Super does not consume anything. It's simply a matter of just getting the super and time being a factor. When the attack gauge, when you're in rage, you have unlimited supers until the next round, right? Because you can't recover life. So you get unlimited super until either you lose or they win. And supers are pretty deadly in this game. Supers by default, it will do about 40% damage with no other variables involved. Let's say in a scenario where you've gotten them in block strings and you taking their guard down, their gauge down, and you're in rage. So you enter this mix-up game, maybe you get a knockdown, maybe they knock you down, whatever, and you're in this mind game of back and forth. They try to throw something out, maybe you backdash out of it, or maybe you just start it through your super out. Iframes, you catch them, and because their guard gauge is low, that means they have 50% less defense, and you have 50% more attack power. So you get a 200% damage increase from this scenario on something that already was 50% life. Am I adding this up correctly? I may have not added this up correctly. But this scenario will do like, it may do like 80% damage. That's super alone. It will do about 75 to 80% damage on that one super in this scenario, right? It's a comeback mechanic for sure, but it's also just gauge management and just the risk reward, being aware, just management. And that's part of the fun in this game because you have choices. You could choose to be a speed demon and go with the iframes like crazy and just try to go with the mix-ups and try to set up block strings. You go in a combo, mix them up. They get mixed up and maybe you do a combo and then they can block out of it, and then you go for the guard stun. Speed boost allows you to get in closer during that guard stun, get the grab, blah blah blah, you out of there, you charge up the next gauge or whatever, blah 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 blah. That's what this game is all about. It's just all about plotting your next move as you're doing something at that moment, and altering your play style within as within the moments that you can, because you can't just do it willy-nilly. You have to find places to sneak it in through everything that we mentioned so far. It's just a lot of juice, and this game has a lot of fun elements in it. For all means, it could be busted. If more people start playing, they could find something that's just extremely busted, and everything that I said and I've been praising about it can just be complete bullshit. It could just be completely thrown off the wayside. But as of right now, I think this game is a hell of a time, and it's very not well known. It didn't come out overseas. It's a Japan only game, so you most likely have to emulate it on the Super Nintendo. But I can tell you right now that I'm having a fun time. There's the overdrive speed mechanic. Maybe I'm just fiending for Street Fighter 6 so hard, but it just feels good getting that extra speed and just starting mixing things up and getting shit that I wasn't able to do before. The drive rush vibes. It's giving me those drive rush vibes, man. And maybe it's just, this game is just something that can hold me over until SF6 drops. And also, we haven't even gotten to the story mode, which is a whole mode within itself. The computers are hard in this game. The computers is hard. On the hardest difficulty, the computers are they are a problem. But I'm just looking at it from the aspect of, hey, this game is crazy fun. Each character has their own problems that you can only enhance by, you actively changing the dynamics of your character as you're fighting. You could be like a super maniac, a super fiend. Super moves act as your guard crest, by the way. Some characters have guard crest as special moves, but each character has a guard crest within their supers. And because there are no consumables, you could just throw out your supers left and right. Of course, you'd be left at a disadvantage if you whiff it and you don't land it. But supers do act as a guard crest. They take off a huge chunk of your guard gauge. And so that's a method of attack right there. You see somebody low guard gauge, throw out a super, crush their guard. You get a combo after it, maybe that's going to be game. But also they get guts from that. So maybe that's going to hurt you in the long run. You know, maybe you throw out a super and they straight up just parry it. They straight up just parry it, right? I mean, you know, there's just plenty of opportunity in this game, and I have to say that I think it's pretty sick. So anyways, I just wanted to talk about it real quick. So yeah, this is Battle Tycoon Flash Hiders on the SNES. Very fun game, very entertaining, intriguing at the least. Anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. May peace be with. Always keep your heads up, deuces, those bows, adios, stay cool. And if you like this content, be sure to show some love, but always be sure to show that love to the people who matter to you. This is ITOwl bidding you farewell. Peace, much love, and stay cool. Deuces.